I almost led the show with this. I'll put it that way. Almost led the show with this because the Big 12 made a huge statement. The Big 12 poached a sitting coach out of the SEC for the same job in the Big 12. Like, most in college football would look at that and say, I can't even call that a lateral move. That's a step down. Why would you leave your post in the SEC to go do the same job in the Big 12? How is that happening? Well, the Big 12 made this big statement via West Virginia. Congratulations to the West Virginia Mountaineers. And all the Oklahoma is SEC Nebraska haters are having one hell of a day because it's looking pretty good. But one hell of a weekend if you go back to Friday and the fact that Oklahoma lost its bowl game to the United States Naval Academy. So, go America. America wins, Oklahoma loses. Saw a lot of that sentiment out there on Twitter. Very funny. Enjoyed it a lot. But here's the deal. Zach Alley, who is technically a co-defensive coordinator at Oklahoma, but he was the guy calling the defense. A pretty universally lauded hire this past year for Brent Venables that did a really good job. Oklahoma's problem, as was very obvious, was not the defense, very much the offense. This guy was doing a good job. He gets hired at West Virginia. He's going to be the defensive coordinator for Rich Rod. And that is just a massive, massive move on a bunch of different levels. You got to I tweeted this, just take it in. Let this sink in. West Virginia poached Oklahoma's sitting defensive coordinator. Just think about that. Take that, digest it, and do with it what you will. That's a big thing to have happen in 2024. So it's also one of those like classic coach move things. I mean, if you're an Oklahoma hater, this was great for you all the way around, not only because it happened, but because this same fan base that has felt so burned by Lincoln Riley over the years since he left. And Lincoln Riley kind of pulled he said, hey, I'm not going to be the coach at LSU, like a day before he leaves for USC. Well, here you had Zach Alley getting asked after the bowl game about the rumors that he might be leaving. And he said, quote, every year there's going to be something that comes up with jobs and whatnot, man, but I'm just excited about our team. I think coming back next season, we're going to have a great opportunity to be successful, be a top defense in the country. And hopefully we get some young guys who can come along to help us do that. So people took that like, hey, he's coming back, right? Not leaving. No, he basically gave the old like vote of confidence. Oh yeah, it's fine. We're going to be great next year. And then pieced out to go to West Virginia. Now I see a comment like this. Oh, you fans are restless, but this never seemed like a great hire, to be honest. Okay. We'll see. Seemed like one that was one. It seemed like Oklahoma fans are a little bit more than restless. And two, I think that was a pretty good hire. I will just say this. That's a huge blow to the ego for Oklahoma fans at a time when they do not need it. Because for the second time in 3 years, Brent Venables is leading them to a completely mediocre season, basically the definition of mediocrity, finishing 6-7. And now they're in the SEC, swimming in those waters. They just lost a bowl game to Navy. And now wait, hold up. Our defensive coordinator is going where? To West Virginia? To the Big 12, that conference that we just left, that we just threw this whole stink about and thumbed our nose at and looked down upon. We're losing our DC to them. That's a huge ego blow to Oklahoma. Whether or not you want to fully admit that or not, that's a huge ego blow. So why did this happen, right? Okay, John, there's got to be like somewhat of an explanation. Well, you can make the case like he had worked with Rich Rod before. Allie did. He worked with him at Louisiana Monroe and then Jacksonville State, where he was the defensive coordinator there. But, he worked longer with Venables. He goes further back with Venables to his days at Clemson and then Oklahoma. But here's the deal. He's got Rich Rod connects. At West Virginia, he'll get full control of the defense, whereas at Oklahoma, I imagine you're dealing with a lot of Brent Venables input because the guy's a multinational championship winning defensive coordinator himself. He's going to want to tell you about his thoughts on the defense. So you can have full control at West Virginia, and you're not attached to a guy on the hot seat. Venables, as I mentioned, like I don't know how much money they really have at Oklahoma to get rid of Venables because they just gave him that contract extension, but it is the SEC. I'd imagine you'd find it somewhere if he goes 6-7 again next year. So you might be out of a job next year where you're going to get a totally fresh start at West Virginia with a fan base that is thrilled to have all of you guys in there. Absolutely thrilled. And then West Virginia is definitely making it happen from a financial standpoint. And that's something that I know West Virginia folks, if you guys listen to like Locked On West Virginia with my guy Mountaineer Paul, he certainly has been all over that. West Virginia was going to pony up for all the money that they need resource-wise for Rich Rod to go out and do this thing the best that they can. So, that's your explanation why. That's not totally crazy necessarily, but I would still say I'm happy for West Virginia. It's great. I'm going to make a point about West Virginia in a moment, but I think it says more about Brent Venables' current situation and Oklahoma's current situation than anything else. Because all that being said, like Allie's worked with Rich Rod before, can get sole control instead of having Venables maybe breathing down your neck a little bit. But damn, that's Oklahoma. Like, that's not just an SEC job. Like, that's a pretty premier job in college football. For you to make that move, you'd have to feel a lot of pressure at Oklahoma. Like, man, I don't love where this is going. To me, it is definitely a statement on where things are going. Because I just, at the end of the day, don't think, and nothing against West Virginia, but Oklahoma, like, that is one of the places you want to get. It's one of the places you want to get. And if you're leaving to go from co-DC, but calling plays, to DC at West Virginia in the Big 12, even if it's with somebody even if the pay is great, I don't know, man. That's an interesting one. Again, bruised to the Oklahoma ego, and would not make me feel great about where Brent Venables' program is going if I were an Oklahoma fan. Now, for West Virginia fans, listen up now, Mountaineers. I am so happy for you guys that you're pulling something like this, because it shows how legitimately committed you are. And it backs up all the talk that was out there about, hey, Rich Rod is going to get full throat NIL support. Anything he needs, he's going to have it. This would certainly be an indication of that. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to work. Don't take this as me saying West Virginia totally nailed this, got it right. You heard my opinion on the hire. I think I liked the nostalgia hire better here than with Scott Frost, but I still have my doubts and concerns about it. Doesn't mean it's going to work, but to me, it's like having the kind of money that you're going to put up for this, the resources that you're going to put up for this, is like table stakes for winning. It's table stakes for winning and making it work with Rich Rod. That means you're in the game. You're in the game, you got a chance. If you didn't do that, if you weren't going to equip him with the resources to go make moves like this, going to be really hard to do it. So you've shown that you're going to pony up what it takes to get at the table and give yourself a chance. And that should get you excited if you're a West Virginia fan. And you deserve to be excited, because the Neil Brown era was pretty blah. Pretty just like milquetoast all around. Just okay. Never great. A little boring. A little bland. This is something you can get fired up and excited about. And at a time when the Big 12 will take any statement that it can make, especially when held up against the SEC, it definitely helps the conference too. And should make the conference better, right? By getting a better defensive coordinator in there for West Virginia to work with. We're not even talking about like the nuts and bolts, X's and O's part of this. It's been more about the symbolism, how symbolic it is of what West Virginia is doing, about what it means for the Big 12, all these things. So happy for West Virginia. When Paul was telling me about this, I was like, I hope they pull that off, man. I would love to see that happen. And so I was pretty pumped when I saw this actually come through and happen. We'll see what OU does. I'm sure they'll be able to pull in a pretty capable replacement, but it's more for Oklahoma. I would say, to the gentleman who commented about, was the hire really all that great? Oklahoma will find somebody, right? Oklahoma will find somebody. Brent Venables is the head coach. He certainly knows a thing or two about defense. Defense is not really my concern for Oklahoma, no matter what, like whether it's Allie or not as the DC. I'm concerned about what they're going to do on offense and making sure that that's going to be good enough. But regardless, it's a blow to the ego at a time when the Sooners definitely didn't need it, and it helps stroke the Big 12 ego at a time when the league definitely does need it, and we'll take any and every opportunity to get said stroke of the ego.